Oh, I know. They got it perfect. Engineering.
Like, you can't even fit a finger. Hold on. Oh, where's the oil dipstick at?
Yeah. Now we're going to wipe it off.
Yep.
Put it back in. Just in case somebody's run it earlier, it'll have oil on it. It could be low. Now this time is the check that matters.
So let's see, where are we at? All right. Now you see where your full line is?
Yep.
So you know that oil is supposed to be right there.
Yep.
But now, where is it going to tell you if it's low or not? So wipe it off again and I'll show you. So you see, obviously, the cat makes it great for you. It says add and full. So as long as your oil winds up in between these two lines, you should be good to go. Normally, you always want to keep it on the full mark. But as long as you are in between the add and the full line on these trucks, Cat does a great job on their dipsticks, honestly. That sounds stupid, but they make it very clear.
That one's good to go.
Now where's your transmission dipstick at? There you go.
Okay. This one's a pain because it's so long. So the next thing we're going to check is the air filter. Before I pull the box open though, I squeeze this little guy right here.
Okay.
You don't have to pull the box open every single day. If you're running this truck, 7 days a week or 5 days a week, I don't have to check this every day. Monday, I'm going to pull this off and open the filter up and check the filter. Tuesday, I'm just going to come in and I'm going to squeeze this. If no dirt or debris falls out here, better chances than none as it's still super clean. So then Wednesday, I might pull the box back open, and again, just to save a little bit of time. Obviously, it's rained and you have a water truck here as well, so it's kept the dust down. So keep that in mind when how often you're going to check it. So just because we don't know, and this is our Monday that you haven't run this truck yesterday, and neither did I, we're going to pop these open. And then also remember that this was facing straight down, so we're going to put it back on the same way. So this is about as far as I need to go to tell that I'm not completely clogged with dirt and debris and all this. And also I don't have an air truck or anything here to blow this out. The only thing I would do if I see debris on here is I would bring it down the stairs and bang it on the steps or something just to get as much as I could out. But that looks fine for me. I'm not going to unhook it or anything. Just make sure it's homed all the way and then put the cover back on. Like I said, it's designed to where all of the air will push the debris and it'll sit in this little channel here.
And so that's why you squeeze this out.
Exactly.
It just sits there.
It'll fall out there before you have to open it. Obviously, the rest of the fluids we can check by sight. You can see that the washer fluid has washer fluid in here. I'd like to see it a little bit higher, but again, we don't have dust or debris, so you're not going to be running wipers. It's not raining today. The only other thing I'm checking is I'm just looking over everything to see, do I see oil everywhere? Anything leaking, anything that's visibly broken before we go and close the hood. This all looks just dirty and normal to me. So that's good to go. I'll go down here and I'm going to stop the video if you close. So Radiator's checked.
So,
or coolant level is checked.
second off, the way you just got down, that'll fail a safety audit for us. Face your ladder, just like climbing a regular ladder at your house.
Yeah.
You face your ladder, 3 points of contact all the time.
Okay.
That roller is a little bit different. I know that's what you're used to, but this, I mean,
Show them how to go up and down the ladder, Luke.
me personally, I've come off a step like that, and I ate shit coming off the back of a dump truck. Always want to put your feet on, have two hands while you can. 3 points of contact always.
And then we come back down the ladder the same way.
Exact way we came up.
Okay.
That is super important.
Yeah.
Because if not, you'll end up hurting yourself.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding when I say I got off in a hurry because we had to do something. It was an emergency. I missed this step and I went right like that in the bed of my dump truck. When I ran a haul truck.
Now when we do the rest of the inspection, we're going to try and work your way around the bottom, up back into the cab, so you don't have to climb in and out of the cab any more times than to open the hood. So the next thing we're going to do as we walk around and we look at grease fittings and all, we're going to start at the front and inspect each tire and wheel. So the only thing we're really looking for, obviously it's covered in mud because we have a muddy site today. We're looking is the squat in the tire abnormal. We have about the same squat in each tire, meaning they're full or full enough.
Okay.
The other thing we're looking for is any shiny bolts or any shiny washers, meaning it has spun or we have something that is loose. And then inside the axle here, this is the nut that we take out to drain or fill the axle. If you were to have this at the bottom and you pull it out, all the fluid will come out. If you have this at the medium point or halfway, that's where we would fill it. So that's the only other thing I inspect. Other than the last is the ring that is holding this on, and obviously it's caked with mud. At the end of the day, just like the excavator operators, our wheels should look like this. So we will have a shovel or something that Luke will provide, and we'll just scrape off just to see the ring. We don't have to clean the wheel or anything, but we want to make sure the ring is intact. Same with this one. But before we move back here, we have a couple of grease fittings and hydraulic lines. So grease point here. We also have a grease point on both of the hinges here. What I'm looking for, since we don't have a grease gun and Luke has a lube truck that'll come and do this, is I don't care that this isn't got new grease on it. It still has dirt on it. What I'm looking for is there is visible grease on the fitting itself coming out. The same with all of them. Even though it's dirty, I have visible grease. Visible grease. Same on the bottom. You can see piles of grease coming out, even shiny grease on the bottom. I'm checking my cab mounts as well, making sure that my rubber's good, my bolts are good. Just kind of doing an overview of everything in here. Every time I come into a joint like this, tomorrow I'm going to pick 5 other things to stare at. Obviously one day during the week we're going to stare at everything, just kind of do an overview, maybe a Friday afternoon or something like that. Monday morning we're going to pick obviously the movement points and the grease points, but then a couple hydraulic lines, just an overview of what's going on before we move back. Same thing with the hydraulic lines going to the bed. All I'm looking for is visible scrapes, scars, something that might be rubbing that I could tell Luke about that might stop you know, the truck from breaking down today, something we can fix right now. And then obviously for the whole back of the truck, this is for the water truck and the articulated haul trucks, is the stack of grease fittings here. Since we can't visibly see some of these grease fittings, this is the block that I would like to see one day this week. Shiny new grease on here, or they've been cleaned by hooking and unhooking a grease gun. If I don't see that when I come in the morning, it could be because of dust or debris, but I'd like to see it in the afternoon or after the lube truck comes. If it's during the day, I want to visibly see them grease these. I'm in charge of this machine, so when the lube person, he or she, comes up, I'm going to say everything has grease spilling out of it, but these guys have been black for 5 days, so I just like to visibly watch you grease those for me. Remember, it's your machine.
Yes, sir.
Coming on back, same with the tire. This is a very good tire to practice on because we can see the ring, we can see everything. If this block comes out, this ring will come off, the entire wheel will come off. So all I'm making sure is my safety block is in, the ring is intact all the way around. Same thing with the nuts and bolts. You'll be able to tell that a washer has moved. It'll just change colors or show you something that is not covered with dirt because it was smashed before and now it's not. Looks good. Obviously this is just a little bit of water from the rain sitting in the wheel. If there had any kind of an oily tint to it, I'm going to investigate a little bit farther and see what's going on, but touching it with my hand, you can see it's just clean water. Same with the rear tire here on the driver's side. And then lastly, I'm looking at the link or the pivot point of the axles here. This also has a grease point which comes from up there with a line through here. You're not going to see grease on here. It's sealed by rubber on the outside, so I just want to make sure all the bolts are in. If the bolt was coming out, we would see the dirt coming out. Again, this is something that I might clean. You are the water truck, so it's hard for you to clean yourself. If we have that second water truck, we might want him or her to blast this at the end of the day. Yep, just so we can see that one time this week or a couple times this week. Again, tread depth, nothing missing, no big scars, no squatting. Everything looks good. The other thing we're going to look at, since this has a water truck attachment, is all of our pumps, hoses, lights are blinking, brake lights are on, or running lights are on. If it has a light, we want it to work. If it doesn't have a light, obviously we're not going to need it. But if it's on there, we want it to be operational for some reason. Obviously the headlights in the back are so you can back up in the dark. If they don't work and you're only working from 7 to 5 p.m., we're going to tell him about them, but we're not going to stop working. We're going to keep going because we don't need them. The only other thing I'm going to make sure throughout the day is my valves all open, everything functions as it's supposed to. Right now while the truck is off, I don't want to open this, especially with us walking around the truck and flood the area. So sometime today I'm just going to make sure I move and open each valve just to make sure it's free and movable. Looking at the rear axle, same thing. I'm just looking at anything that pivots. The bar on the left side here, this is called the track bar, keeps the axle centered as it goes up and down. It also has a plug in it to drain the fluids, so that's the main point I'm looking at to see. It'll have a pile on the ground. It could be dirty, it could be wet, but if there's a pile on the ground, I have active leaking overnight, so we got something to attend to. And then also the one thing that nobody ever checks is the inside of the rims. I want to see them packed with mud and dirt. I do not want to see oily mud and dirt. That means I have an axle seal problem. This could be driving 30 miles an hour across the job site and lock the axle up, and somebody behind you could run into you, or you're going to get thrown out of the seat. So we want to try and stop anything that's going to stop this machine from running through the day right now as we can catch it rather than in the middle of the day. So this all looks perfect. The only other thing I'm going to want you to do while we're here is when we fire this machine up, when we have it idling, we're going to leave the parking brake on and have Luke help us at least one time this week, if not every single day, tell you that your parking or your reverse beeper is working. Okay, so after we're done, we're going to fire it up. I'll help you, or Luke will help you and give you a thumbs up that we hear the beeper, or you can clearly hear it yourself, then obviously you can check it yourself. Well, the only reason I brought that up is we don't want to fire it up, leave the parking brake on and put this in reverse and step behind this machine. If the parking brake was to fail or come undone, you know which way she's headed. Okay, so we're going to be safe and have somebody help us if we can't see it or hear it. We need a teammate. Obviously the mud flaps are there for a reason. We don't want it kicking up dirt and debris to somebody behind us, one of the work trucks or something. So again, if it has it, we want it to be intact, nothing hanging down. That's going to hinder our day. And then honestly, it's just repeat. Same look at the wheels. I don't have a tremendous amount of squat. I have pure water. I don't have oily water in there. All of my nuts and bolts, my ring is intact. My pivot point looks good. Seal is intact. Bolts don't look like they're coming out. Again, we might want to wash this one day during the week with the other water truck, or even the hose with yourself at the end of the day, washing these rims and these pivot points off for tomorrow's inspection. Take 20 minutes or so at the end of the day. Third wheel looks good on the passenger side. Again, mud flap, making sure if it has it, it's intact. Over here, since I didn't look at it on the other side, I'm going to look at this pivot point here. This is not a greasable pivot point. I just want to make sure that the bolt is through. If we were to drive and this was undone, the entire rear axle assembly is going to stay where it's at and the rest of the truck's going to keep coming. So we definitely don't want that. The other thing we're going to look at is the front of this front rear axle, the forward rear axle. Again, I'm just looking at the ground, no puddle from the center diff or anything's leaking. And then inside of the wheels, again, just peeking in there to make sure that I don't have any grease, oil, any kind of debris that's foreign other than mud and dirt. Everything looks good. Yep, and then obviously the parking brake on the drive shaft and the drive shaft itself. Any nuts and bolts that I can visually see. I'm not going to go in here every single day and reach my hand and touch everything, but just staring at everything, and you know, I might wiggle the drive shaft just every once in a while, change your flavor up a little bit to touch different things to make sure we've checked it all by the end of the week. So this all looks good. Back to here, we have the same grease points that we can see we got grease coming out. My cab mounts, bottom link, top link, Upper cab mount, everything looks good. These bolts will come loose, you know, 6,000-7,000 hours or so. These will start to pull up, so we're just checking them. Yep. These I will put my hands on just to make sure I can't move this bolt. But before I'm backing out, I'm just inspecting all the hydraulic lines. The seal for the pivot is good. No dirt and debris is going to go into there. And then lastly, the front tire will complete the bottom or the lower portion of the inspection. Again, the ring is good, bolts are good, drain is good, there's no mud, there's no oil in the wheel. The last thing we're going to do for this front axle is stare at the underneath. Same thing we did there, looking inside this wheel. When I'm on the other side at the pivot point, I'm staring inside this rim here, and then obviously the center of the diff, just staring at the ground to make sure I don't have anything on the ground as far as leaking. And then all of our pans at the bottom of this machine that cover the engine compartment and the transmission and all the hydraulics lines. I just don't want to see any bolts hanging below any other bolts. Everything is nice and up and tight, nothing hanging down. And also, nobody has run into anything and squished it up. It could be touching a fan, it could be touching belts, it could be touching hydraulic lines. Okay. So even though you don't see anything leaking, if we see a big old smash in these pans, we're going to pop the hood back open and do a little more investigation just to make sure, is this machine okay, even though it's just the steel guard pan that's been bent. Okay. Now that we've completed the bottom, we're going to go visually inspect our way up. And what I'm going to do is start with my stairs. We've already gone up and down the stairs on the driver's side to open the hood to get to the oil compartment. We haven't done the passenger side. So all I'm making sure is my rubber straps are not broken. My step is hanging properly. I would like to press on this step, even though I'm not going to use this on this side of the truck for any of my inspection purposes, just to make sure that somebody doesn't get on it later and it break, or it's not breakable, or hasn't been broken in the past and nobody's noticed it. Just visibly looking up to make sure all my bolts are holding my hoses, and then going to my wind screens or glass, just making sure there's no damage. Everything as clean as possible. If this was 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning, the last thing we're going to do is wipe all the dew off our glass and our mirrors, making sure we can see before we back up or drive forward. The other thing I'd like to point out, and this is a very good truck that we checked out that this mirror is taped on, this is functional. If you can see out of it and see clearly and nothing is shattered, even though it's held on by some Prospect pipe tape right now, that's functional. Yeah. But obviously, if it's your first day in the truck, that is not OEM. So we're going to let Luke know that, hey, the mirror's fine, but it's taped on, so it needs to be on the list of, you know, eventually this is going to need a mirror. Yes, when you can get to it. Absolutely. Okay. So passenger side is finished. We'll go back over to the driver's side and inspect the windows and mirrors. Okay. And even though we're talking our way through this in the morning, it only takes me, 10-15 minutes to walk around and do this. We do it real quick with eyeballs most of the time. Okay. I've already checked the stairs, we've used them, but we're going to do the same thing, just make sure the pivot works. Sometimes these will freeze up, and when you go through a very deep rut, this will rip the step off if it's not free and can flip up. So that's why I just want to make sure it's free and can move. Okay. All the rest of the steps are good. What I'm looking for, obviously this step is very hard to damage, but I don't want to see it covered in mud, clay, or anything that's going to make you slip as you're getting up here. Obviously damage is the first one. Moving up, we've already checked the radiator fluid, but the guards on all the fan department and the hydraulic cylinders and hydraulic hoses that are in here, the coolers, we want to make sure there's no damage to that. And then all the way up to the top here, our windows, everything looks good, no breaks, no damage, mirrors are good, everything is ready to go. So this is the completion of the ground inspection. The last thing I would like you to do as an operator, and we're not going to film this, is go in. So, obviously you know your hood, here's all your lights. I can't figure out why the parking lights are still on, but they might be wired all the time. That is true. So you know how to check your gauges and everything. This truck, it does it pretty easily. It tells you the hours right there. You don't even have to search for it. Back in the day when him and I started operating, they used to be on a circular gauge somewhere in the cab. You'd have to find it. Or on the back of the machine or somewhere, I swear to you. So, as you know, your fuel looks good, your depth looks good. Just let it warm up a little bit because it's a little chilly out. Yeah, the only thing we want to see on the temperature gauge on the bottom right there is the needle just move. It doesn't have to come up, you know, mid-green, but that bottom right where it has the little, yep, that droplet. As soon as that needle pops up at all, ready to roll.
And that's actually your water temp right there.
Is it?
Yeah, that's your
hydraulic fluid.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yes, the top left.
Is that oil?
That is
One's hydraulic, one's transmission on the bottom.
Okay.
So then that's transmission.
That's transmission. I'm sorry. That's hydraulic.
Yep.
And that's water.
Water.
Okay.
Then obviously your fuel, your DEF gauge, and then you know that the fuel gauge. We all know the fuel gauge of this truck is messed up. 3/4 of a tank is low. So you know, just follow your habits of every day you get fuel.
Okay.
That's, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Just follow the same motions. Seatbelt. Let me grab him a new inspection book. These are full.